Hi, I'm Kambo and this is my exhibition Access Mundi. My practice is interested in ideas of liminal spaces, portals, the sort of cosmos. And when I was looking into that, I started doing a bit of research and came across the idea of the Access Mundi. And that central point in the exhibition in that space has been really key. It's about the idea of different spaces, sort of where we go, where we come from, that idea of sort of transcending upwards as well as descending downwards. So that idea that it's not just a linear path. So sort of highlighting that point, but without going, that's the middle, has been something that we've considered throughout the whole sort of production of the work on the show. So the residency came about through the arts development programme, and I was in residence for around 7 months, which was really useful. So I had a studio space, and in that space I was able to sort of create work and test ideas. Being able to be in the building's been really useful because I could go down and visit Level 2 gallery, I could spend time in there, I could chat with front of house. So I was able to sort of get their input on how people move around the space and sort of how they engage with it. So it was allowing me to think much more practically and actually how do I want someone to move around or to look at the work, or how do I sort of create a space. It allowed me probably the first time to make work that was 100% what I wanted to make or what I wanted to experiment with and trial. And I think the run up to the exhibition has been so useful in me being able to sort of learn new techniques, work in new materials, work in new mediums, and being able to sort of expand out of what I would regularly make and being able to work at a higher calibre of the way that I've produced the work and who I'm working with a team rather than trying to make everything myself, which I've never done before. So sort of learning from others and getting other people involved has been a really exciting sort of part of the whole exhibition and the commission, because I've been able to create new partnerships, create new collaborations, which in my own practice is something that I find really interesting, sort of chatting and learning from other people. A lot of my work tends to be sort of monochrome, tends to be black and white, which works really well for the sort of type of work that I'm making and what I'm trying to convey. But this has really allowed me to sort of push using colours and how I'm using colours and where they're being placed and what they're being used for, which is something that is a bit scary to do because I'm so used to working in just 2 colours. So whenever there is a colour in the work, it's really prominent, but it's also quite powerful in the work, I find. Also, I really like the tactility of a lot of the materials I've used. So, for example, the sort of rope elements and the knots, but it's also that idea of the time that's spent actually knotting them. So I've sat, I've moved, I've made, I've created, and they're sort of quite sacred objects. They've spent time with me. And it's that idea of sort of when it comes back to like meditation and spending time and sort of what they could activate in that space. The sort of outside orientation space gives you an idea of what is to come. There's some sort of really subtle symbols that are on there which then translate into the space, so you almost perceive what might be there before you go. We've got a small rock that's above the doorway, which is quite a key part when I think of the idea of protection and entering spaces, that threshold which goes back to the idea of portals and liminal spaces. So you're almost walking through into a new space, so it's not about it being a gallery space, it's meant to be a place, a realm, a space you've now entered. So to move around it is meant to be an experience. The creation of the banners is quite an interesting process, sort of moving from 2 colours to 3 colours, but then also thinking about what goes where and what the placement is. Originally I was thinking maybe they'd be on a wall or they might be in a bit more of a square format, but going with this circular sort of space that's created by the way that these banners sort of hang. They almost create a veil in that space. They're still a bit ephemeral, they've still got movement, but there's still gaps for people to move through, so they're permeable. But then the idea of sort of these circles and dashes, they sort of relate to the ideas of mapping and spaces and how you move around. We've also got the sort of interweave lines, you could say, which come to the idea of sort of like DNA and double helix, but also that motion of moving up and moving down. And then we've got things and elements such as the sun, which is a symbol that I regularly use, which also could be to do with light, and the ideas of sort of the heavens. I'll use the dart, the hand, the eyes, which technically, yeah, they've been used since the beginning of mankind. But for me, it's that idea of sort of reusing them for a way that they have an understanding to myself and in relation to me. So you've got obviously like the idea of the dart, the idea of sort of everything expands from, it's the starting point but grows back to. You've got the hand that sort of creates, the idea of sort of the protector, the mother, it conjures things through that. And also just a lot of sort of circles and lines, which I know quite minimal, but the idea of sort of thinking about how these spheres sort of grow out. When I think of the planets and I think of the cosmos, there's a lot of sort of spherical, there's a lot of spirals, that idea of like we're a minute part of that cosmos, so sort of highlighting those much grander, that idea of like the macro and the micro and how things can grow out of them. I think this exhibition is a total step change in my practice, being able to work with really experienced sort of curators, working with the technical team, being able to kind of go, I would like to make this, and someone go, okay, this is how we can do it, has been so beneficial to my practice and understand how things can be made. But also being able to work at a totally like huge actual capacity and the material I'm making, the scale of the work generally. I've not made tiny works, but they were kind of, you know, intimate pieces, but I've been able to really expand beyond that with this exhibition and sort of test the boundaries of that, which has been really exciting. A bit scary, but amazing.